One bread, one body, one Lord of all, one cup of blessing which we bless, and we, though many, throughout the earth, we are one body in this one Lord.
Greetings, fellow co-workers of Christ. Welcome to Wednesday night Bible study. If you all will please bow your heads, we're going to start with a prayer. Great eternal Father, we come to you in the name of our Savior Jesus Christ to thank you so very much for allowing us to gather together today so that we can glorify you, so that we can understand your word better, so that we can become the lights to the world that you would like us to be. Father, we ask you to please inspire the speaking and please inspire everyone that's listening, that we can be encouraged to continue to follow you, to willingly and lovingly follow you. Father, thank you for the blessings you have bestowed upon us, and thank you for everything you've given us. So let it be.
That will be done.
Okay. It is Wednesday night Bible study, and at the bottom of the screen you can see a little box that you can send us a message, any comments, questions, anything you want that's on your mind that you would like to relay to us that we might possibly have an answer to. If you want to just send us an email, if you write House of God, you have to write the whole thing out, House of God 1015 at gmail.com. That's houseofgod1015 at gmail.com. And the 1015 is letters. Don't write out 10 and then write out 15. No, it's 1015. Let's see, Austin Church, we're doing pretty good. I don't know. About the biggest news we have is we're still a couple months away from Feast of Trumpets. We've got Feast of Tabernacles coming up. We've got Day of Atonement coming up. Last great day. So we need to have all of that on our minds. But Feast of Trumpets coming up next. And Wahlberg is where we will be meeting. If you're in the Austin, Waco area, you're more than welcome to participate. And with that, that's about me running out of stuff to say. So, you got anything, Ron?
Yeah, let me clarify something right quick. I know everybody can't see me, but when you were talking about the little box at the bottom, that's on our website. If you're viewing us on the website, there's a message box on the bottom of the viewing screen, and you can put the message in there and then hit send or whatever, but it has a little math issue or problem that you have to solve down at the bottom, like 8 plus 2, you put 10, and then it's a security thing. You can put that in there and it'll send it to you. But if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll want to use the email address that he gave, which is houseofgod1015 at gmail.com. You'll have to use that because there is no chat box or anything else in YouTube. I just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
And with that, I think it's all yours, Nick.
It's all mine? Okay. Where do I look? There?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Looks like I'm looking right into it. So, last month, yes, did you have something else, Ron?
Oh, I was just saying I'm going to put a face on that. When you're looking at it, you see a face there.
I kind of like the red dot.
Okay.
But anyway, Ron's like a spirit tonight. You hear him, but you can't see him.
I'm like the wind.
Yeah, you're like the wind. Last time I spoke was about a month ago. I spoke about genetically modified animals, and especially putting human genes into pigs and that type of thing. Tonight I'm I'm talking about genetic modification of plants, but I'm only going to talk about wheat. One reason is if I talk about genetic modification of plants, it's going to take me a year to research it and a month to give it to you. So I have done a lot of study on modification of wheat, and I want to give that tonight. There is a lot of information on wheat modification. Now, what has man done to wheat? Wheat is the staple of life, or the staff of life, as some people say. It goes back way back in the Bible. It's one of the first plants mentioned in the Bible as far as edibility. But the problem with modern day wheat is that it's affecting our health and our society. And everything that I say about food is very controversial. People get very upset about food. But there are many people who have problems with wheat, and there are many people who do not right now. I'm one of these people who has problems with it, wanted to find out what was really happening, and did some research on wheat. Now, my wife, Lisa, was watching a talk show one day, and this guy was on there. His name is William Davis. He's a medical doctor. He's also a cardiologist, and he wrote a New York Times bestseller named Wheat Belly, kind of like Beer Belly, but people who used to drink a lot of beer and had big bellies. But these people ate wheat and had big bellies because wheat doesn't act like it used to. So I got the book and started reading it. So I cut down wheat a lot in my diet. Every once in a while I eat some, but I cut it down tremendously. It's very difficult not to eat at least some wheat, no matter if you try to stay away from it, because wheat is in so many different foods. So to cut it down on my diet even took several months. And my blood sugar, as I did not eat wheat, was improving. And also I lost some weight by not eating wheat. Now, I've been a diabetes educator for many years, and I taught people to eat whole wheat. Also, I would eat no sugar and eat whole wheat and different things like that, and actually lose a pound a day at one time on a Sugar Busters diet. Sugar Busters doesn't work anymore because you can't eat whole wheat and not gain weight. So I tried to eat whole wheat thinking it's good for me. My blood sugar went up more than if I'd eaten a Snickers bar, and that is the absolute truth. As a matter of fact, I mentioned the glycemic index. Well, the glycemic index, the higher the number, the faster it goes into the system. Whole wheat now has a glycemic index of about 72, which is extremely high. It means it goes in very, very quickly. It's about as quick as table sugar goes into your system. Another thing is, now refined wheat has about a 67, which means it goes in slower now than whole wheat. So the more components you can take out of wheat, the slower it goes in. A Snickers bar, any of our audience, used to be audience, there was only one, but any of our audience know what a Snickers bar glycemic index is? 42. 30 points less than whole wheat. If you're going to eat the same amount of calories in whole wheat, you might as well eat a Snickers bar. You'll come out better off if you're diabetic. Now, it doesn't mean the fat and stuff won't make you gain weight, but initially, Snickers bars make your blood sugar go up less than whole wheat. Grapefruits have a very low glycemic index, probably the lowest glycemic index of any fruit. Oranges are second, apples are third, as far as going into your system very quickly. So, just wanted to mention that. And I'm not sure about the goodness of modern wheat because it's really not that good. It really hits you physically to include medical problems. It can cause mental problems to include wheat addiction. You ever wonder why you just can't hardly give up wheat now? It's because it's addicting to you. Social problems of wheat. financial aspects of wheat, and the most important are the spiritual problems of the growing of modern wheat. Are we breaking God's law the way that we grow modern wheat? Let me go through some physical problems. The first wheat known to man was einkorn. It's named einkorn. And let's go to Leviticus 19:19. And I used this scripture last week, and I have very few scriptures. But it says something very particular there, and sometimes it takes science a long time to catch up with the Bible. But in Leviticus 19:19 it says, "You shall keep my statutes. You shall not let your livestock breed with another kind," and we went through that the last time I was here. "You shall not sow your field with mixed seed. You shall not sow two types of grasses that are going to reproduce in your field. Nor shall a garment of mixed linen and wool come upon you." That one sentence, "You shall not sow your field with mixed seed." Now, why was that important? Well, animals and plants reproduce after their own kind. Let's go to Genesis 1, and we'll go 11 and 12. And we're supposed to keep it as close to its own kind as we probably can. We're not supposed to be putting genes of animals into other animals and that sort of thing. And especially not human genes into pigs. But what about plants, and what about wheat? So Genesis 1, 11 and 12. I hope it hadn't been torn out of my old Bible here. But it says, "Then God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit, according to its kind, whose seed in itself of the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind, and God saw that it was good." Now, after their own kind, all living things are supposed to reproduce after their own kind, and we're not supposed to mess with that. Okay, that was ordained by our Creator. In other words, and this has happened, do not mix spider genes with goats to make milk that looks like silk. That has actually been done. We're not to mix certain types of plants together. We're not supposed to mix animals and plants together. So plants are somewhat different, and wheat is probably one of the most different. Now, if two humans give birth to a little bitty human, both the parents and the child will have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Both parents, one parent will give 23 pairs, another parent will give 23 pairs, and that baby will be born with 46 chromosomes. Okay, wheat's not like that. Every animal that breeds, you're going to have the same amount of chromosomes in the parents and in the babies. Okay. But wheat's not like that. If wheat mixes with another grass, it usually increases the number of chromosomes. So in the book Wheat Belly, named Wheat Belly, because some people get large bellies from wheat now, and they overeat because of wheat, because it raises your blood sugar, and then your insulin raises, and then your blood sugar goes down and your insulin stays up, so you're hungry within 30 minutes. It's like the old adage, you eat Chinese food, you're hungry within 30 minutes. So the initial wheat was called einkorn. A very nice lady gave me some einkorn wheat. I did not read the instructions. I tried to make biscuits with it. I put in the regular amount of milk. And I almost used the rest of the box trying to get it to make some kind of a lump, because it just turned into this liquid. It takes, if you do use einkorn wheat, it does take a lot less milk, and you will find that on there, how to cut it down. I don't read boxes, so I learn by trial and error. But modern wheat, now remember, einkorn has 14 chromosomes. Modern wheat has much more than that. Now, in the ancient days, somebody raised wheat with goat grass. So goat grass plus einkorn gave 28 chromosomes to wheat, double the amount of chromosomes, and that was called emmer wheat, which is also a ancient wheat. So you can eat emmer. It doesn't bother you too much. You can eat einkorn. Now, einkorn and emmer were the two types of wheat. They were the standard for thousands of years until mankind really started messing with genetics, and that was primarily around somewhere in the 1800s. Now, modern day wheat, remember einkorn has 14, emmer has 28, and modern day wheat has 42 chromosomes. And some of the extra stuff in there is causing problems with people's health. The problem with emmer, well, the problem I know with einkorn, I've never tried emmer. The problem I know with einkorn wheat is you're not going to make a donut out of it. You can't. It doesn't have the right glutens and things. So you need modern wheat to make the biscuits and the honey buns and all of the stuff that we like. Trouble is, it doesn't like us very much. And some people it doesn't bother very much, and some people it bothers a lot. Now, remember, it said you're not to grow in your field mingled seed. Because if you grow wheat and you put a wild grass in there, the wheat may breed with that wild grass, and then you're going to get something that you've never even seen before. Well, we do that genetically. We cross-pollinate for our desired effects. And a lot of times we come up with something called hybrids, and they will not reproduce. So we shouldn't really sow wheat with oats or barley or wild grasses, because there's no telling what we're going to come up with, and we shouldn't sow oats with wild grasses, that sort of thing. Now, if you go and listen to Tom Bradford in Torah Studies, he explains it as like growing wheat in a vineyard, that the two plants will take away from each other and cause undesirable changes like small fruits and that sort of thing. That's not what it's about. I might have taken that as an answer at one time, but studying wheat as I've done, I don't accept that anymore. So cross-pollination of two grasses is the result of planting two grasses together. If you plant two grasses together, you get a mess. If you cross-pollinate, you get a mess, eventually. With wheat, it increases the number of chromosomes. The scientific name for that is polyploidy. Okay. Now, mankind thinks that he's smart enough to do this. Well, I should say people, include women too. Mankind thinks that they're smart enough to do this, but I gave the example last week. An alcoholic is told by his doctor not to drink alcohol. So he doesn't drink alcohol, but he goes in, he hires a doctor, he hires a nurse, they run an IV of alcohol into his veins. He's not drinking alcohol technically, but he's still breaking the rule, and he's doing it, he's causing himself even more harm probably than if he drank it. Now, people want new plants. My first degree was in agriculture. Mainly animals, but a few plants and horticulture and things like that, and soils and all of that. New plants are grown for certain traits. You want more fruit, so therefore you have lesser stalk. You want it easier to harvest, so it has the fruit in a certain place. You want to make fine flowers, because who wants to try to make a cake out of einkorn? It's going to look about so wide, it's going to look like a big pancake by the time you get through with it. It doesn't rise like regular wheat. It has a kind of a pungent smell to me and a kind of a pungent taste. It's not bad, but it's about $14 the last I heard for a little box of it. So it's not cheap. There's a few people who still raise it and still raise it in their original form. Now, we raise monocrops. So doing that, we raise it so that it's easy to harvest, so that it's got a certain size stalk. You ever notice how corn is all the same size or wheat's all the same size? That's bred into that genetically. Now, einkorn wheat will not make a cupcake. I like cupcakes, but I can't hardly eat them. But I do get these little flaxseed brownies that are pretty good at the health food store, okay? And they got no wheat in them whatsoever and no grains in them whatsoever. Now, the worst physical health problem with wheat is high blood sugars. As I mentioned before, the glycemic index, it goes in much faster. And I did a lot of work with the glycemic index. Now, don't think all candy bars are the same. A Snickers bar has a 42, 41 glycemic index. But a Mars bar has a 68 glycemic index. So don't think you can just substitute all candy bars, okay? But if you're a diabetic, you will have a better blood sugar after eating the same calories in a Snickers bar than eating the identical calories in whole wheat bread. Now, I know how patients think, because I was a nurse for 35 years. I was a nurse practitioner for 15 years. I know how people think. And one guy had this big glass that held about a gallon, and he said, my doctor said I should cut down to 1 glass of wine a day, okay? I'm not saying go out and eat Snickers bars, all right? They're full of fat, they're full of sugar, they're not good for you, you know, but they actually have a lower glycemic index now than wheat. The quicker the sugar enters the system, the more difficult the time the body has of decreasing the blood sugar. And we get something called hyperinsulinemia, which means high insulin in the blood. Hyper means high, insulin, and then emia means in the blood. So the body puts out a lot of insulin, the blood sugar goes down, the insulin slams down the blood sugar very quickly, but then you have a lot of insulin and it's got to have something to work on, so you're hungry. Even Superman cannot resist insulin. It's that strong of a hormone. So then you eat sweets. After you've eaten bread, you eat more bread or you eat more sweets, the sugar goes even higher, more insulin dumps out, and then you get into a very, very bad cycle. Bread made from modern wheat makes you hungry. Almost everybody hungry. Now, einkorn wheat, as all carbohydrates, does increase blood sugar. And I even tried this myself, but I'll just use Dr. Davis's on page 26 and 27. The einkorn wheat raised his blood sugar from 84 to 110 milligrams per deciliter. 84 to 110. The modern wheat, he started at 84 and he ended up with 167 blood sugar with the same amount of calories. So that means that those calories went into the bloodstream very, very quickly. But that's not reliable. It had a similar thing happen to me too. It raised my blood sugar far more than the einkorn did, regular wheat did. But those, when you only use 1 or 2 subjects, that's called a case study. That's not a research study. But case studies are important because they point you toward what needs to be researched. Now, another problem with modern wheat is we have more intestinal diseases. We have irritable bowel syndrome. We have acid reflux. And we even have a very serious disease now from wheat called celiac disease, where the small intestine is being literally harmed by subsequent massive diarrhea, weight loss, and other problems. And many of these people, according to Dr. Davis, improved tremendously after stopping wheat. So, the less wheat I eat, personally, the better blood sugars I have. The less hungry I am, the less weight I gain. But again, this is not research, this is a case study. And again, whole wheat raises my blood sugar more than refined wheat now, which used to, whole wheat hardly even, in the 90s, hardly even raised my blood sugar. So I only covered a few of the problems with modern wheat. Okay. But I'll move on. There are other problems. I'm going to go to mental problems of wheat. And the one that I want to go to is wheat addiction. Now, there's this wonderful Italian restaurant I go to, used to. They bring you on a cold day this big loaf of hot Italian bread and lots of whipped butter. And by the time the main meal arrives, I usually put it in a box and go home because I've eaten so much bread. But, you know, I can joke and say that bread's addictive. It is. Now, it took me 3 months to even cut down on wheat in my diet. You may have a better story than me. But I also noticed something. I didn't feel as bad as I usually do. And I don't have as much nasal congestion and chest congestion when I don't eat much wheat. I can regulate my appetite much better. Now, also, when I quit eating meat, and this is kind of a personal thing, I used to have nightmares a lot. Now I had one, I think it was 2 nights ago, and that's the first one I've had in a long, long time. But I used to have nightmares. My wife would wake me up screaming. When I decreased wheat in my diet, I hardly ever had a nightmare anymore. Now, once again, that could just be me. But you can have nightmares if you have a rapidly increasing and decreasing blood sugar in the middle of the night. That can even happen. It's very difficult to separate the physical from the mental when it comes to eating wheat. But visceral fat, or the fat around the organs such as the heart, the liver, and the intestines, it doesn't act like regular fat on the arms and legs and others. Visceral fat produces estrogen. I know a lady and her brother. I know her brother, and then I know her through her brother, but she told me, she said, and she knows I'm a nurse, or was, well, I still have a license, I just don't practice anymore. But she told me that after all of these years, she's in her mid-50s, that she has a high estrogen level. And she wondered why. And the doctor, her gynecologist, didn't really explain it to her that well. And I told her, you know, I backed up and I said, you've gained weight. And that weight, especially the fat around your organs, is putting out a tremendous amount of estrogen. And that's why she actually started her period again. So that can actually happen from visceral fat. Some people may call in and say that's not true, but in her case, I think that's what happened. Now, if you're taking narcotics such as heroin or morphine, you can give a drug called Narcan or Naloxone, and it will take away the symptoms of the narcotic overdose for about 30 minutes to 1 hour. I've done it many times. People come to me under anesthesia, and then all of a sudden they can't breathe. I know that they've had a lot of opiates in the OR, so operating room. So I give them Narcan, call the doctor and give them Narcan, and all of a sudden they wake up and they're alert and everything. The trouble is they're hurting again, but at least they're breathing well. Now, narcotics are made from poppy plants, and that includes heroin, morphine, Demerol, and others, Dilaudid. And we can get a runner's high by doing some exercise like excess running. Now, our body releases endorphins. Endorphins, I've had the running high one time. Back when I was younger and slimmer and all of that, I used to run a lot. Well, one day, all the pain left, everything left, just like I was floating on air, and I just continued to run and run and run. I have no idea how many miles I ran. And my wife has a picture up on the mirror of when I was a runner. I don't know why that's there, but anyway, she has a picture of me up there when I was a runner. And endorphins, when they come out, they're very powerful. They relieve all pain. That you have this high like you've never had before. Now, once that kicks in, you cannot believe how good you feel. The next morning, I could not hardly get out of bed. I was in the military. It was all I could do to get in a kind of a bowed-up position, and finally got my feet on the floor. I was hurting so badly because I had overdone my body and not really realized it. Remember, Noxolone can stop the effects of narcotics, but Noxolone also stops the effects of wheat. So why is that now? Because as far as I know, that has nothing to do with einkorn or emmer wheat. It has to do with modern wheat. Now, a component of modern wheat is called polypeptides. They occur after digestion, and when going to the bloodstream, can go to the brain and attach themselves to the opiate receptors in the brain like narcotics such as heroin or morphine. Are you following me? Is that okay? So now wheat, the polypeptides of wheat, attaches themselves to the opiate receptors of the brain just like narcotics. Therefore, Noxolone can stop the effects of wheat. Narcotics are very addictive. The polypeptides of wheat are very addictive. So, now these are gluten-derived polypeptides from wheat, and they're stopped by Noxolone, which should not be happening, okay? And if you want to really read on this, it's page 48 and 49 of Wheat Belly by Dr. Davis. So in modern wheat's effects being blocked by the same drug that stops the effects of narcotics, one has to reason that it's pretty doggone hard to stop eating wheat because your body desires it. Raise your hand if you knew this. You already knew this? All right. So the World Health Organization now has something to say about this. On pages 49 and 50, Dr. Davis says, study of 32 schizophrenic people who had hallucinations, Noxolone was shown to decrease hallucinations. However, they did not take it farther and decrease or totally give away with wheat. And it's very hard to decrease wheat because your body craves it. It's kind of like decreasing heroin. Your body's going to say, I want this much of it, because it's that addictive. So now wheat is as addictive as heroin. It just doesn't do as bad to you, in a way. According to Dr. Davis on page 15, and I quote, so this is our brain on wheat. Digestion yields morphine-like compounds that bind to the brain's opiate receptors. It includes a form of reward and mild euphoria. If you want to eat good, eat a loaf of bread, I guess. When the effect is blocked and no exorphin-yielding foods are consumed, some people experience a distinctly unpleasant withdrawal, and I did. And I had some wheat today, and I feel terrible. Felt good going down, but my mother-in-law's with me. She made a peach cobbler. I ate some of it. So I would have never believed that stopping eating wheat is so difficult. If you really want to try it and see how hard it is. Now, if I don't eat beef for a week or so, let's say my budget's down and I have to eat eggs instead of beef, okay? If I eat chicken, green beans, and other foods, I don't really miss beef. I don't dream about beef. I don't have hallucinations about beef. I don't have bad dreams at night because of beef. Dr. Davis on page 51 said if you give Noxolone to wheat-eating people, it can decrease their hunger, cravings, caloric intake, and they can diet. That should not be. So Noxolone acts on ingested modern wheat like it acts on narcotics, and that would certainly show that wheat is a very addictive thing. Social and financial problems of wheat. There's a lot of controversy over wheat. internet article by Nick Rose. He's an MS. What's wrong with wheat? Cardiologist Recense David, it says is wheat making us fat. Master of Sociology, I think is what an MS is. Cardiologist William Davis' recent book, Wheat Belly, suggests that wheat is addictive, causes us to overeat, and wheat consumption is the main cause of obesity and diabetes crisis in the United States. How many of you thought it was Mars bars and Cokes? The anecdotal evidence cited in this book is not supported by nutrition research, which still supports the benefits of eating whole grain foods, including whole wheat, for weight maintenance, diabetes risk, and cardiovascular health. It is true that refined wheat products contribute to weight gain and diabetes, but Wheat Belly's claims that wheat makes you fat is not supported by science. Americans may be overeating cookies, and then he says this, Americans may be overeating cookies, muffins, baked goods, and wheat-based snacks, but it's not because of the wheat we overeat. Okay, there you go. Now, that makes no sense, because I have taken my blood sugar before I ate wheat and after I ate wheat, and I know how much it shoots up. I took my blood sugar before I ate einkorn wheat and regular wheat, after I ate einkorn wheat, and I know how much it didn't shoot up. There was a marked difference. I've also taken my blood sugar after a Snickers bar just to see what it would do. I really enjoyed the Snickers bar. But let's look at some of the statistics of wheat. It is probably the largest grain grown in the world. How am I doing on time here? I'm doing fine, right?
It's right up there in front of you.
Oh, it's almost camouflaged. But I see the clock now. My clock is wrong. My watch is wrong. Maybe time to get a new one. This is from Food and Agricultural Organizations, International Grains Counselors, the Grain Market Report, million metric tons. European Union, 2001, 157 metric tons. That's 2,240 pounds per metric ton produced wheat. China, 126 metric tons. India, 94 metric tons.
Is that million or is that?
That is.
Because that doesn't sound like 156.
No, I think it's 2 million metric tons.
Okay.
All countries with quantity at least 2 million. So this is 157 metric tons. 157 million metric tons, I'm sorry. On and on and on. But anyway, if you go through each country and add it up, it is a tremendous amount of, and that's only the ones with 2 metric tons or above. Serbia is the smallest, 2.4 metric tons. The EU is the largest, 157 metric tons produced in 2001. So, wheat, there's a lot of it. Now, the amount of wheat grown has been steadily growing and was steadily raised from 58 million metric tons worldwide to, in 1996, to 729 million metric tons in 2014. So 58 million metric tons in 1996 to 729 million metric tons in 2014. So if you multiply 729 times 240 times a million, 2,040 times a million, that's how much you're going to get in pounds. It's quite a bit. China is, I think, now leading the way on most recent statistics. So just the sheer amount of wheat produced should begin to show the importance of wheat on the world economies. And go to your grocery store. Go by the freezer section. Look at everything that's got wheat in it. Everything from pasta to whatever. Go down the bread aisle. Go down the chip aisle, and you will see pretzels and all of that stuff. And Just go and look at how much wheat. Go to the bakery, of course, and just look at how much wheat you have. And it is a tremendous amount, and there's wheat in almost every processed food now. I've even heard there's wheat in potato chips, but I don't know how you got there. But crackers, cookies, pretzels, snacks, breads, all of this, and you will see maybe 100 feet or more of wheat products. Then go look at different stores that sell donuts, cakes, cupcakes, hamburgers, that sort of thing, that all take wheat and bread. So go to the cereal aisle. And very few, I have a cereal that is made of 100% oats, but there's not many of those. Most of those contain wheat in varying amounts. Go to the pasta aisle, and you will find all kinds of stuff in Italian foods, different pastas. So it's very difficult to stay away from wheat. So economically, wheat sells a tremendous amounts. Have we got any questions so far yet?
Oh.
Either nobody's listening, or they're confused, or you understand everything I'm saying. So grocery stores, donut restaurants, bakeries, and many other businesses, and hamburger places, sandwich places, it's just wheat everywhere. And then wheat straw, the byproduct of that, is usually put into animal feeds or used for bedding for animals. So this society is very financially dependent on wheat. So the changes in wheat, I don't believe they were trying to find out how to make a new drug. I do not believe that. I believe that they were trying to increase the world's food source. And being in agriculture, there are ways that you can do that, and universities have little plots of ground where they plant certain seeds and then mix them with others. So I don't think it was a worldwide conspiracy. I do think that it was something that farmers and researchers wanted to do to help feed the world, increase the amount of wheat. But the wheat now, to me, has less nutrition, has problems sociologically, financially, because we're so dependent on wheat now, and has so many other problems with physical problems, especially diabetes. And by the way, type 2 diabetes used to, if you saw a child with type 2 diabetes, it was something else. Almost everybody in the clinic wanted to hear about it, hear what happened, that sort of thing. Type 2 diabetes now, non-insulin dependent was the old name for it, has become almost rampant in young children. And according to Wheat Belly, wheat is one of the major causes of this. If you drink sugar, your blood sugar goes up, it goes back down. You eat wheat, your blood sugar goes up, and you get into a terrible cycle. We have made ourselves so dependent on wheat for the economy and everything else. And also, we have given our wheat, for lack of a better term, AIDS. Wheat cannot protect itself now from bugs and stuff. Almost everything we raise now can't protect itself. Plants used to have a protection against bugs. Tomatoes, their skins have something called lichen. If a bug tries to eat that skin of like a heritage type tomato that can reproduce, it usually dies because it's not supposed to do that, and the plant can literally protect itself.
I got a comment. It says, I'm really enjoying the Bible study this evening. I just want to comment on one of the ways that consuming wheat can cause psychological conditions. Consuming wheat is known to alter the microorganisms that live in the gut. Gut microorganisms are known to play a role in psychological conditions such as depression, So if your gut microorganisms are altered by consuming wheat, it makes sense that this would cause changes in your mood and psychological conditions.
Yeah, and Alex and I have spoken about that, and his wife, of course, is a microbiologist. Your gut does have a very fine balance between viruses and bacteria and fungus. And you throw that balance out, you kill off a bunch of bacteria, let's say with antibiotics, you can, and sometimes antibiotics are necessary, but you can take prebiotics, probiotics, eat certain yogurts and get that back up. Wheat supposedly now damages that. We have to use now with wheat, with our monocrop, we have to use a lot of specialized fertilizers. We have to use a lot of special insecticides. We have to use fungicides. We have to use herbicides that kill off round leaf plants because the other is a grass, wheat's a grass. And we put all of those on plants so that we can, and we hybridize them so they can't reproduce themselves. So we have to literally protect them now against disease and pestilence, whereas before they had their own protection in most cases. And then we do certain other things. We want yields, but we have increased quantity, but we've not increased quality. One of the things that I have tried to do since I've owned a little bit of land and tried to farm it with just a little bit of stuff was the Sabbaths of the land. Let's go to Leviticus, the 25th chapter. And we don't practice this either. Leviticus 25, we'll go to verses 2 through 7. And there's a lot of controversy over what is actually the Sabbath of the land. I have a certain time that I do it. Other people disagreed with me. Some people agreed with me. But I don't know that anybody really knows exactly. Verse 2 of the 25th chapter says, "Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, then the Lord shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. The land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you shall sow your field, in 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. What grows in your own accord of your harvest you shall not reap, nor gather the grapes of your unattended vine, for the year is the rest of the land. And the Sabbath produce of the land shall be food for you, your male and female servants, your hired man, and the stranger who dwells in it, for your livestock and the beast and all the land. And its produce shall be for food." Well, every 7 years, I do not plant anything. Something comes up. Now, I don't eat it. Now, yes?
I got another comment. It says, so between GMOs and plants and hormones in most all animals, is there really anything safe and nutritious?
Snickers.
What's that?
Snickers.
Snickers bars. No. Do not go there. What you have to do is figure out what hurts you almost. I eat vegetables and fruits primarily. I eat organic meats when I can afford them. I try to stay away from wheats unless it's something like einkorn. I haven't had einkorn wheat in a while. I don't think wheat bothers very many people around me, but it bothers me. And I started looking for what was making my sugar go up no matter what I did, and found out that whole wheat was worse for me than anything. But I understand the frustration of that, because we have done to our food what we should have never done. Let's go real quickly to Leviticus and 25th chapter, verse 18. It says, "Wherefore you shall do my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and you will dwell in the land in safety, and the land will yield her fruit, and you shall eat your fill and dwell therein in safety. And you shall say, what shall we eat the 7th year? Behold, we shall not sow, nor gather nor increase. Then I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year, and shall both bring forth fruit for 3 years, and you shall sow the 8th year and eat yet the old fruit until the 9th year, until her fruits shall come out of the old store. What we've lost here, and this is the spiritual aspect to me, or one of the spiritual aspects, instead of doing the Sabbath of the land, we decided we would go with fertilizers, insecticides, hybridization, and all these other things, and we could improve on einkorn wheat, which I don't believe we can, because einkorn is a very nutritious wheat. Instead, we lost our faith. We quit. We produce year after year after year. We tire out our lands. The grapes of wrath was about the Dust Bowl and how they had planted, especially cotton, so much that they turned the land to nothing. Whereas if they had practiced what God said, they would have been able to have produced for many, many years. We've lost our faith as far as foods go, as far as I'm concerned. All I know is that I cut wheat out of my diet, or mostly out of my diet. Every once in a while I have a little bit, which I totally pay for, and feel much better as long as I do. Yes, Randy?
We have another comment. It says, would this wheat problem be a part of the system that has caused so many allergies and asthmatics, etc.?
It could be. Once again, I tell you the difference between case studies and actual research. I'm a case study. I can tell you whole wheat makes my sugar soar, okay? I can tell you that I have all kinds of problems with it. I can tell you that I have bad dreams if I eat it, and I did not know why until I understood that it acts much like a narcotic. Also, it may be slamming down my blood sugar in the middle of the night, and that can cause problems too. But I'm a case study. Case study is not research. There needs to be more research on this. Now, why do you think that there wouldn't be a lot of research on this? The tremendous amount of money in wheat right now. They're going to tell you, just like that sociologist did, that there's really nothing to this. Well, there's really something to it with me, because I know how I feel when I eat wheat, and my mother-in-law is going to have to quit making peach cobbler. But I know how I feel when I eat wheat. Now, Jennifer, you're here. I want you to know, I love that bread you used to make.
I know I do too.
And I also want you to know that I never want you to make it around me again, and I never want the recipe. No matter how much I beg, do not give it to me. Okay?
I won't.
Okay. Any other questions that we have? No more questions?
Yeah, out of subject matter?
Yeah. Out of subject matter if you want to.
Well,
have you tried wheat and seen how much it goes up on?
no, I've never experimented with myself. I try to stay away from breads and things like that, and getting donuts and stuff. But
Can I ask a personal question?
sure,
Did you notice they were increasing your blood sugar?
I never particularly paid that much attention to it. I don't check my blood sugar as often as I should.
I know that I felt sluggish and tired and bloated, and I didn't know why until my friend who had read Wheat Belly said, "It's the wheat." And she was quoting me stuff out of the book that you read. And I said, okay, that's it. I knew I wanted to feel better enough that I could quit bread and wheat because I was addicted to it.
Yeah, it is very addictive. I want to tell you something about the glycemic index. In 1983, I started to Vanderbilt, no, wait a minute, 1981. 1981, I started the Vanderbilt College Master of Science program in nursing. Now, we were in a building that was paid for by Godshaw Sugar. Now, Godshaw Sugar was the one who started the glycemic index because they said that certain foods go into the system just as fast as sugar. And guess what? Whole wheat didn't. Regular flour did. Now, that was 1983. Nowadays, whole wheat bread goes into the system faster, or just as fast as many sugars. Now you have, what did I drop here?
That's all right.
You have many different things that raise blood sugar quickly. Bananas will do it. Carrots will do it. And help me out here, Jennifer.
Will sweet potatoes do it too?
No, sweet potatoes are much lower.
Because of the fiber.
Sweet potatoes have a much lower glycemic index because of the fiber. Irish potato, well, sweet potato is not really it's a root.
No, yeah.
Potato's a tuber. But there are different foods that went into the system as quickly as sugar, and they said, well, you should eat these foods because God saw sugar is just as good as other sugar, other sugars. Corn goes into the system very quickly. But that's because they bred the fiber out of it. But I don't know of any food right now that's worse than wheat. And that's my personal opinion. I don't know of any food that's worse than wheat because of
Now I want to ask you the question that
the opiate
everybody
thing.
out there is wanting to ask, but they're too scared to ask.
What's that?
Where's beer on the glycemic index?
Beer's made out of grains and
Well,
all that stuff.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But beer has two aspects to it. Okay. Number one, beer is made from malt, which has a tremendous amount
But it
of
has
sugar.
a wheat in it.
Yeah,
Some do.
it can have wheat. Usually it's like barley and hops and different things like that. The other aspect of beer is it has alcohol in it. And the alcohol actually, after a while, decreases blood sugar and can actually throw you into a low blood sugar.
So it counteracts each element.
No, it doesn't counteract each element. It doesn't. It doesn't.
All right.
I drink like a 12-pack a year. I would just kill
Yeah,
it.
I know. I drink a beer every now and then. I drink red wine is actually
Oh, yeah, I know. It's
red
not
wine.
good.
It doesn't really raise blood sugar. It usually lowers it. Alcohol itself lowers blood sugar. The problem is it can, if you're a diabetic, it can slam you down. And when I was a certified diabetes educator, I told diabetics, if you're going to drink, make sure you eat. Make sure you carry a snack with you because you never know when it's going to slam you down. And make sure you eat something that's going to last you a while with a long-acting carbohydrate protein. But by the time the 2000s, whatever, rolled around, wheat's one of the worst things. And what scared me the most was the polypeptide sticking to the receptor sites, the same receptor sites as the opiates did.
That is very scary.
It's very scary to me because I do not know how they made modern wheat. I do not know that at all, but I do know that it's not good for me. It may be good for other people.
I have a friend who has celiac disease so bad that he cannot even walk down the bread aisle in a grocery store because it affects him adversely so bad.
A lot of diseases might be done away if we did away with wheat as it is.
I agree totally.
And went back to raising the einkorn and went back to the Sabbaths of the land, which I didn't have much time to get into, and trusted
the
God
rye?
for our produce.
What about rise and
As far as I know, they haven't been tampered with as much, but rye and
that's mostly what we eat.
barley and the other grains. Supposedly rye bread now is better for you.
It's still,
But-
it's still a gluten, and for me, that's the problem, is the gluten.
Some people have problems with gluten, but other people don't have problems with gluten. They have the problems with the wheat itself.
I can tell you the best bread you can possibly eat. And that bread you're going to have this Saturday. When God said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So this Saturday in Austin at 10:30, you can partake of all of the spiritual bread you want. And if you don't get enough from us, you can run up to Waco, well, it's Eddie, and you can partake of even more spiritual bread at 1 o'clock. And if you want to hit somewhere in between the two, go down to Houston at 12 o'clock, and they will have some awesome spiritual bread for you. And with that, I am going to say, hope to see you in Austin, and you all have a very blessed week.
Good night.
God bless.